Morning fog hung low over the city streets as the number 23 bus screeched to a stop beside a crowded curb. Doors slid open with a hiss, and passengers moved inside, all half awake, all minding their own world. But today, something different was about to unfold. Among the crowd stepped Evelyn Carter, 72 years old, dignified, elegant, silver hair curled neatly behind her ears, purse clutched close. Posture upright, like she had carried strength her entire life. She nodded politely to the bus driver, Robert Whitman, tall, bulky, with eyes cold as unfinished winter. She dropped her coins in the box. Clink, clink. A simple sound, it was the moment everything would change. Whitman barely looked at her. Just a grunt. A scowl. He hated something about her, even if he didn't say it yet. Evelyn turned toward the open seats at the front row, the kind meant for elders like herself. She gently stepped forward, steady, slow, graceful. And then, Whitman's voice cut the air like a knife. "Not there." The bus went quiet. Even the engine seemed to hold its breath. Evelyn paused mid-step, turning her head with a calm, puzzled smile. "Excuse me?" Whitman leaned forward, eyes sharp, jaw tight. "Seats up front aren't for you. Move to the back." The passengers froze, eyes wide, hands hesitating mid-air over phones, purses, briefcases. Everyone heard it. Everyone felt it. No one spoke. Evelyn inhaled softly. One breath of courage. One lifetime of dignity. "I paid my fare," she answered gently. "I'll sit where I choose." A ripple moved through the bus. Shock. Disbelief. Fear. Whitman slammed his palm against the dashboard. Bang. The bus jerked violently, passengers grabbing seats to keep from falling. His face reddened, voice rising with ugly authority. "My bus. My rules. Move or get off." Evelyn did not flinch. She stood like a stone in a storm. Not today. In that moment, silence turned electric. A teenager lifted her phone, recording. A man in a suit lowered his newspaper. A mother hugged her child closer. A decision was made. History was about to happen. Outside the bus, morning rushed on like any normal day. But inside, the fight for respect had just begun. The bus doors closed with a heavy thud, like judgment being sealed. Whitman gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. But he didn't pull away from the curb. He wanted control. He wanted obedience. He wanted Evelyn Carter to shrink. But she stood there, one hand resting lightly on the front seat, eyes steady, refusing to be erased. A young woman, sitting near the middle, finally whispered, as if afraid her voice might shatter against the silence. "Ma'am, you can sit here. I'll move." Evelyn turned, soft gratitude in her smile. "Thank you, dear. But I won't give up my place today." Her voice was gentle, yet unbreakable. Whitman's jaw tightened. He slammed the brake pedal with unnecessary force, causing passengers to lurch. A few gasps, a few curses, a few frightened looks. Then his words came out like venom. "You people always think you're owed something. This is my bus, and I make the rules. If you don't like it, walk." A chill spread through everyone listening. "You people." It hung in the air like smoke. Toxic, heavy. "You want to defend her? Then you can get off too." Gasps rippled. Someone near the back muttered, "He can't do that." But Whitman enjoyed it. The power, the control, the fear. He leaned back in his seat, one hand near the radio, eyes dark. No one moves until she does. We'll sit here all morning if we have to. Evelyn lowered herself into the front seat slowly, deliberately, as if claiming land stolen long ago. She folded her hands in her lap, composed. The act was simple. But on that bus, it was revolutionary. Whitman's face twisted. Oh, you think you've won something. He threw the gear into drive, jerking the bus forward suddenly. Passengers gripped seat backs. A child began to cry. Someone shouted for him to stop. He didn't. He was angry, and he wanted everyone to feel it. But Evelyn. She sat still as stone, her dignity louder than any engine. A man near the back, a mechanic judging by his uniform, stood up, steadying himself with a handrail. Driver. That's enough. She paid like the rest of us. Whitman spat back without even looking. You don't tell me how to do my job. Another voice rose, trembling, but brave. She has every right to that seat. Phones lifted. Voices grew. The bus was no longer silent. Evelyn turned slightly and spoke, not to Whitman, but to everyone. I'm not here to fight. I'm just here to exist without being told I don't belong. Her words were not loud, but they filled the bus like thunder. Whitman snapped. He stopped the bus abruptly and stood, pointing at her with raw authority. I said move. Evelyn lifted her chin. Slow, powerful. That single syllable hit harder than any shout. Whitman's face flushed with rage. He grabbed her by the arm, roughly, too roughly, the kind of force meant to intimidate. Passengers shot out of their seats. Hey, stop. You can't do that. Let her go. The mechanic stepped forward first, strong, unwavering. He placed himself between Evelyn and the driver. You touch her again, he warned, and you'll answer to everyone here. Whitman didn't back down, but he hesitated. Power only works when others remain silent. And the silence had died. By now, half the bus was filming. Some standing, some shaking with anger, some holding back tears. Evelyn placed a gentle hand on the mechanic's arm. Thank you, she murmured. Then, she turned back to Whitman. Voice calm as sunrise. You will not push me. Whitman's breathing grew heavy, furious, cornered. He reached toward the radio, thumb hovering over the emergency call button. The moment hung in the air like a lightning strike waiting to happen. Then, from the very back of the bus, another voice rose. Deep, steady, unshakable. Driver, the man said, stepping forward slowly, coat dripping from outside rain he'd just come in from. If you call the police, call them for yourself, because she hasn't broken the law. Whitman looked back, and the man stepped into full view, tall, professional, calm. An off-duty judge. A hush fell again. Evelyn's eyes widened, not with fear, but with recognition. Hope. The judge continued, voice cold as steel. And if this footage hits the public, it won't be her reputation on trial. It will be yours. Phone zoomed in. Passengers leaned forward. Whitman finally, visibly, faltered. Power was shifting. Not through violence. Not through force. Through unity. Evelyn spoke once more, soft, dignified. All I wanted was a seat. The judge nodded, backing her. And you will keep it. Whitman clenched his teeth, cornered by truth, surrounded by witnesses. But cornered men don't surrender quietly. Instead, he did something no one was ready for. He reached for the bus keys and yanked them out. The engine died. Everyone froze. Evelyn held her breath. The real battle was still ahead. The bus fell silent, as if the world itself paused to watch. Whitman stood at the front, like a king stripped of his crown, clutching the keys with trembling fury. Windows fogged from body, heat, and tension. Rain streaked down the glass like tears from a sky that had seen too many moments like this. He wasn't driving anywhere. Not till Evelyn moved. Not till dignity broke. But dignity does not break. Not when guarded by courage. Evelyn sat still, hands folded, eyes forward. Not defiant, not hostile, simply unshaken. Her presence alone felt like history standing up again. Passengers exchanged glances. Some angry, some scared, all waiting. Then the judge spoke again, low and deliberate. "You can shut off the engine, driver," he said, voice like a gavel striking wood, "but you cannot silence an entire bus." Whitman's eyes narrowed. "You think you can threaten me just because you're a judge?" "No," the judge replied. "I'm not threatening you. I'm informing you." A woman near the window whispered, "End of discussion." While standing, a Biden depiction of vast self-reflection within department time. "I will not walk backward into a world I already fought to leave." "Sir," she answered, "I marched when I was younger. I sat at counters where I wasn't welcomed. I stood in lines where I was told to step aside. I buried friends who refused to bow so that one day, I could sit in peace." A gasp rolled through the bus, like air rushing into lungs that had been closed too long. Whitman's face darkened, but something else flickered behind his anger. Uncertainty, a crack in the armor. He tried to recover, raising his voice even louder. Questions. "Last warning, lady. Move, or I call the police and have you removed." Evelyn did not blink. "And if they remove me," she said, "they will have to remove everyone who stands with me." A pulse moved through the passengers, like electricity. The mechanic stood straighter. The teenager raised her phone higher. The mother wiped her eyes, holding her child close. One by one, people rose from their seats. Not shouting, not violent, just standing. Against injustice. For Evelyn. For themselves. Whitman's eyes darted, left, right, front, back. Realizing he was no longer in control of the room he thought he owned. "Sit down," he barked, voice cracking. No one moved. Except Evelyn, who finally stood, but not to obey. She turned to face the passengers, all eyes on her, cameras recording, injustice catching fire under dignity. She spoke softly. "Thank you for standing. But do not do it for me alone." Her hands trembled, but her voice did not. "Do it for the child who will one day take my place on this bus. For the young mother who will be told she doesn't belong. For the boy who might grow up believing silence is safer than truth." Tears streamed down cheeks. Phones held steady like torches. Evelyn continued. "If we bow today, they will expect us to bow tomorrow. If we stand today, maybe someone else won't have to stand alone." Then she turned back to Whitman, voice like iron heated and sharpened. "Call the police if you must, but this time they won't be called to remove me." She gestured at the sea of passengers now standing in solidarity. "They will be called to witness you." Whitman froze, his throat tightened, his power draining like water from cupped hands. The judge stepped forward. "You heard her. This bus is full of witnesses. Your decision now decides your future." Whitman felt the weight of eyes, of phones, of the truth pressing down on him. He looked at Evelyn one last time, not as a driver to a passenger, but as a man forced to face what he had become. For a moment, just a moment, he hesitated. But pride is stubborn, and he clung to it like a drowning man to a stone. His thumbs stabbed the radio button. "Dispatch, this is bus 23. I have a passenger refusing to comply. Send units." A collective breath rippled through the bus. Fear, anticipation, resolve. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly before opening them with new fire. Then she spoke 3 words, quiet but thunderous. "Let them come." And somewhere outside, sirens began to roar. Getting louder, closer. History was about to walk through that bus door. Not peacefully, not quietly, but powerfully, because justice was coming. And it wouldn't be alone. The sirens grew louder, not distant now, but circling the block like wolves scenting tension. People inside the bus felt the sound in their bones. It wasn't fear anymore, it was awareness. History was stepping closer with every echo. Whitman stood straighter, chest rising, like a man finally getting back up. "They'll handle this," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Evelyn remained seated, hands calm in her lap. That stillness unnerved Whitman more than any argument could. It was the kind of calm a person earns after surviving storms other people only read about. The bus doors hissed open as 2 police officers climbed aboard. Wet boots thudded against the rubber floor, uniforms dark from rain, badges bright under flickering yellow lights. The first officer scanned the scene, starting with Evelyn, then Whitman, then the crowd silently standing behind. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked. Whitman marched forward, like a man eager to reclaim his throne. "She refused to follow instructions," he snapped. "I told her to move to the back. She didn't. Remove her." The officer turned to Evelyn, not unkindly, just officially. "Ma'am, is that correct?" Evelyn met his eyes steadily. "I paid my fare. I attempted to sit in the designated senior seating. I was told I didn't belong." Those words landed heavy. Didn't belong. Passengers stirred like wind through trees. The teenager stepped closer, phone raised. "I recorded everything," she said, voice shaking but brave. He threatened her. He yelled. He grabbed her. She only defended her right to sit. The judge spoke next, stepping into full view. "I witnessed the entire incident. She acted within the law. The driver acted out of prejudice and intimidation." The officers exchanged a look, subtle, tense. Whitman scoffed. "You're all taking her side? She's causing trouble, that's all this is. Okay." But his posture betrayed something he couldn't hide anymore. He wasn't confident. Officer inhaled deeply, eyes narrowing on Whitman. Whitman frowned. "What for?" "Standard procedure," the officer said, tone polite but firm, but not his. Reluctantly, Whitman followed them down the steps, out into the rain. Through the windows, passengers watched them speak, voices muffled, gestures sharp, Whitman growing red with frustration, while officers remained steady. Inside the bus, silence tasted different now. Not fear, expectation. Evelyn sat unmoved, not triumphant, not smug, simply present, like a monument carved from resilience. The mother with her child approached gently. "Miss, thank you," she whispered, "for not backing down. My daughter was watching." Evelyn turned to the little girl, wide-eyed, holding her mother's hand, like the world might slip away without it. "What's your name, dear?" Evelyn asked softly. "Lila," the girl murmured. Evelyn smiled, fragile and warm, like sunrise through storm clouds. "Lila, never let anyone tell you where you're allowed to exist. Not even someone in charge. The girl nodded slowly, like her heart would remember those words longer than her memory ever could. Moments later, the officers returned. Whitman followed, but something was different. He was no longer the man who barked orders and slammed brakes. He looked smaller, like truth had carved pieces out of him. One officer stepped forward, voice clear, projected. "Ma'am, after speaking to witnesses and reviewing the situation, you are within your rights to sit where you are. You have broken no law." Gasps, a few cheers, a few quiet tears. Whitman flinched, jaw clenching. "And you," the officer continued, turning toward him, "have violated passenger conduct regulations. You are to step aside from driving duties, pending review." Whitman's face drained of color. "You're siding with them?" The officer didn't flinch. "We're siding with the law." The mechanic folded his arms. The teenager grinned behind her camera. The bus, once silent in fear, now exhaled with righteous relief. Whitman stared at Evelyn, rage, disbelief, and something like recognition fighting inside him. "You caused this," he whispered. Evelyn held his gaze. Not hateful, not vengeful, just honest. "No," she replied. "I only refused to bow." Whitman's hands shook as the officers escorted him off the bus. Rain swallowed him like a man being washed away by his own choices. When the doors closed again, the new relief was tangible, like air finally found room to breathe. The judge took one step closer to. He wasn't defeated yet, only shaken. Because some men don't break when challenged. They break when they realize the world is watching. And the world was watching now. Everything had changed, but the story wasn't finished. Not yet. The bus sat idle. Engine silent. New driver yet to arrive. People waited. Rain fell. Tension remained. Something was coming. Something bigger. And when it arrived, the rain eased, but did not stop, like the sky refused to forget what it witnessed. Inside the bus, people sat again, though many chose to stand near Evelyn, not wanting distance, not wanting separation. They weren't strangers anymore. Shared courage had made them something else. A replacement driver hadn't arrived yet, so the bus remained still, engines cold, windows streaked with rain, hearts still hot from confrontation. But silence didn't return, it transformed. Whispers filled the air. "Did you record everything? Is she okay? This is going viral." The teenager, thumbs moving fast across her phone, announced it, like a bell ringing across time. "It's online, 10,000 views already." Evelyn blinked, not used to being amplified, not used to her resistance echoing through digital walls. "I didn't want attention," she murmured. The judge looked at her gently. "You didn't get attention," he replied. "You gave others permission." The woman with the child added, "My daughter will never forget today." Leela smiled shyly up at Evelyn, a look so pure, Evelyn felt her heart tighten. But outside, there was movement, something new. A camera crew hurried across the wet asphalt toward the bus doors. News vans, microphones, boom mics, flashing red record lights. The world wasn't just watching through phones now. It had arrived. The doors opened again with a hiss, now the sound of history breathing in. A reporter stepped forward, raincoat dripping, eyes sharp with story hunger, but softened by respect. "Ma'am, we heard what happened here. Would you be willing to speak with us?" Evelyn exhaled, slow, fragile. "I don't know if I have anything important to say." The mechanic laughed softly, shaking his head. You already said it. The judge nodded, voice firm like carved oak. You stood when most sit. You stayed when most fold. That is history, Ms. Carter. Evelyn hesitated, looking at faces turned toward her, looking for permission she didn't need. Then she stood again, slower this time, as if the moment itself deserved grace. The reporter lifted the microphone. Why didn't you just move to another seat? She asked, gentle but direct. Evelyn's eyes shimmered, voice quiet yet enormous. Because every time we move to make someone else comfortable, we teach the world we don't belong. A collective inhale swept the bus. No one blinked. No one breathed too loud. The reporter swallowed, visibly moved. And what do you want people to learn from this moment? Rain tapped the roof like applause. Evelyn answered without shaking. That age does not erase dignity. That skin should never erase belonging. And that silence only feeds injustice. We must stop shrinking. Phones recorded. Cameras captured. History etched itself deeper. The reporter turned to the crowd. Anyone else want to speak? The teenager raised her hand, timid but growing taller through bravery. I was scared to film at first, she said, but I'm glad I did. If nobody watches, nobody changes. The mechanic added, we pay the same fare. We breathe the same air. We stand beside each other, not behind. Voices spread through the bus, one by one, until they weren't voices anymore. They were a chorus. For Evelyn, for themselves, for anyone who had ever been told to move. Eventually, the new driver arrived. Younger, calm-eyed, respectful. He nodded at Evelyn before starting the engine. Where would you like to go, ma'am? Evelyn looked surprised, fragile, touched. Home, she whispered, but not quietly. The doors closed, the bus moved again, but this time, the power wasn't in the driver's hands. It was in the people. They rode through the city like a torch moving through darkness, passengers speaking, recording, posting, sharing. By the time the bus reached the next stop, notifications exploded across screens. 100,000 views. 400,000. 1.1 million. The story was no longer local. It was a wildfire. A woman in her 70s had sat in a seat, and the world stood behind her. But every fire draws shadows. As Evelyn stepped off the bus, applauded, thanked, hugged, a black car across the street idled like a threat waiting to choose its moment. Windows tinted, engine purring, presence cold. The judge noticed it first. Evelyn, he murmured, voice shifting. We should get you home safely. She frowned slightly. I'm not afraid. I know, he replied, but bravery shines and shadows see it too. The car door opened. A figure stepped out. Dark coat, hard eyes, jaw tight. He walked toward Evelyn, measured steps, precise, deliberate. People froze. Phones lifted again. Not curiosity now, but protection. The man stopped 2 feet away from her. You caused a problem today, he said quietly. The mechanic stepped forward immediately. Back away. The man ignored him, eyes locked only on Evelyn. You think this ends here? Embarrassing the department? Trying to make us look weak? The judge stepped beside her, voice like cold steel. She didn't embarrass you. She exposed you. Tension crackled, like electricity about to spark. The man's mouth curled in a half-smile, half-threat. This isn't over. Evelyn lifted her chin, small but immovable. It never is, she said. And that's why we keep standing. The man stared one more second, studying her, measuring her strength, then returned to the car. It pulled away slowly, leaving only suspicion behind. The crowd watched in silence. The rain finally stopped. Sunlight broke through clouds. A moment too bright, too symbolic to be coincidence. Evelyn breathed, light, steady, unbroken. The world had changed today, but the fight wasn't finished. It had only begun. That night, Evelyn sat beside her window, the light from passing cars painting slow, trembling stripes across the wall. Her tea had gone cold. Her home was quiet. Too quiet for a woman who had just moved a city. Outside, the world was speaking her name. Inside, she was remembering the weight of 72 years. Activism had cost her once. She had marched. She had rallied. She had fought. And she had lost friends along the way. Age does not dull memory. It sharpens pain. But now, for the first time in decades, the world was listening again. Her phone buzzed endlessly. Messages, news alerts, interview requests, strangers thanking her. Evelyn let them ring. She did not seek applause. She sought change. Around midnight, her doorbell rang. One sound, sharp, unexpected. Evelyn hesitated before opening it. The judges. Warning, replaying in her mind. Shadows see bravery too. She cracked the door. And there stood Daniel, the mechanic from the bus, drenched from rain, breathing hard as if he'd walked for miles. "I had to check on you," he said, voice raw. "That guy today, the one who watched you, that didn't feel right." Evelyn offered a tired smile. Gratitude and weariness blended together. "You didn't need to come all this way." Daniel shook his head, firm. "You didn't need to stand up on that bus, but you did. So we stand with you now." Evelyn opened the door wider. He stepped inside, not as a stranger, but as community. A small portable radio on her table. "Turn this on, if anything feels wrong," he said. "I'll hear it." "I live 3 blocks down." Evelyn's eyes warmed. "NP. Young man, you've already helped enough." But Daniel lifted his chin. "No," he said softly. "Not enough. Not yet." That moment, simple and quiet, was the birth of something powerful. Not resistance. Solidarity. By morning, the internet was an inferno. National #Stand with Evelyn. Her face, calm, poised, unshaken, political panels. People in other cities began sharing stories of discrimination, unfair treatment, forced silence. Protests formed outside the bus company headquarters. Not violent, unified. White, black, young, old, all standing for a woman who refused to move. Evelyn watched from her living room, fingers pressed to her lips, overwhelmed not by attention, but by awakening. Daniel knocked on her door again. This time, not alone. Behind him stood the teenager with the phone, the young mother with Leela. A dozen others from the bus, arms full of posters and umbrellas. "We're heading to the protest," Daniel said. "They want you to lead the speech." Evelyn stared at them, breath thin, unsure if she had the strength for a crowd that large. 72 years had not spared her body, though they strengthened her soul. "I'm just one woman," she whispered. "Nothing more." The teenager stepped forward, camera still around her neck, fearless now. "One woman can start a fire," she said, "but a city can carry it." Evelyn's eyes burned, not with pain, with purpose. She nodded. She would go. By noon, the streets were oceans of people. Umbrellas opened like flowers, posters raised like shields. The bus company CEO stood behind protected glass, face stern, trying to ignore the movement swelling outside. But people don't shrink after they've seen themselves stand tall. Evelyn walked slowly toward the stage, microphone waiting, crowds parting like a river, moving for a ship too important to block. Daniel guided her up the steps. The judge stood at the side, nodding once. Approval, respect. Cameras flashed. News helicopters buzzed overhead. For a moment, Evelyn looked small against the magnitude of the crowd. Then she inhaled and became enormous. Her voice carried across the crowd like a flag in the wind. "I did not intend to lead," she said. "I only intended to exist." A roar of agreement spilled forward. Cheers, chants, shouts. Evelyn held one trembling hand to her chest. "I sat in that seat because my mother once stood so I could sit one day. I refused to move because my ancestors refused to disappear." Silence fell, reverent, electric. "So today," she continued, "I ask you not to march for me, but for every person told to shrink so others feel tall. For every voice forced quiet. For every step pushed backward." Voices rose again, louder, unified, thunderous. The CEO could no longer hide behind glass. He stepped outside, flanked by board members, face pale. He cleared his throat into his mic, forced humility dripping. We would like to publicly apologize to Miss Carter. The driver involved has been suspended pending termination review. We are instituting new anti-bias regulations immediately." Cheers erupted, but Evelyn raised her hand. Silence returned like obedience to a queen. "No," she said quietly, "not enough." The CEO froze, blindsided. Evelyn stepped closer, voice steady. "You apologize today because we made noise. I want change tomorrow when we are silent." The crowd swallowed breath. The CEO swallowed fear. "Our buses," Evelyn continued, "must be safe for everyone. Our elders must be respected. Our citizens must stand without being pushed back." The CEO nodded rapidly, trembling under the weight of truth. "It will be done, publicly, formally, permanently." Evelyn exhaled, not victory, but justice. The crowd surged with applause. Lila climbed onto the stage and hugged Evelyn's waist. The microphone picked up her small voice. "You didn't move, so now we don't have to." Evelyn wept, the kind of tears history earns. The movement was no longer just hers. It belonged to the people. But not everyone celebrated. Behind the crowd, far on the sidewalk, Whitman stood watching. Face dark, eyes full of resentment. He whispered to himself, "This isn't over." Shadows do not vanish when the light grows. They wait. Quiet, patient, planning. The story had changed the city. But a storm was returning, and it would strike before dawn. Night returned heavy. Thick clouds swallowing the moon. Streetlights stretching long shadows across the concrete. The protest had ended. The city quieter now, but not asleep. Change rarely sleeps after awakening. Evelyn sat on her porch, wrapped in a soft shawl, a gentle breeze brushing her silver hair. She looked like peace, but her eyes still carried the echo of battle. The tea beside her was warm this time. She held it with both hands, like holding a moment she never expected to live again. A knock at the door broke the stillness. One knock. Slow. Intentional. Daniel had told her to call him if anything felt wrong. But tonight, she didn't hesitate. She opened the door herself. Whitman stood there. Not a driver in uniform. A man in a coat soaked from rain. A man whose pride had been ripped open for the world to see. His face was tight, jaw clenched, eyes fierce with something dark and unfinished. Evelyn did not step back. You came looking for closure, she said softly. He laughed under his breath, bitter, broken. You really think you won today? Look around. I lost my job, my reputation, everything. Because you couldn't just move your feet. Evelyn met his anger with steady calm. I didn't cost you your job, she said. Your actions did. Whitman stepped closer, rain dripping off his coat like poison. You stood, and the city followed. You didn't just defy me. You humiliated me. Evelyn's voice stayed soft, but became steel. No. I revealed you. Whitman's hands trembled. Not with violence, but with realization. You're stronger than you look, he whispered. Evelyn nodded once. I am, because I carry those who came before me. His eyes softened, just barely, and for a flicker, he didn't look like a villain. He looked like a man confronted by the mirror he tried to avoid. Around the corner, footsteps echoed. Daniel, the judge, the young mother, the teenager. All arriving like a wall of quiet protection. They didn't push Whitman. They didn't threaten. They simply stood behind Evelyn, the way she once stood alone. Whitman looked at them, at the unity he could never command, and something in him cracked. Not rage, not hate, understanding. He lowered his head. I didn't know people would stand for you like this. Evelyn placed a gentle hand over her heart. They didn't stand for me. They stood for themselves. Whitman's breath shuddered. A man learning too late what power really is. Not control, but respect. He turned to leave, but Evelyn stopped him with a final truth. You can change, she said. Standing up isn't only for us, it's for you too. Whitman didn't answer, but he paused. And sometimes pause is the beginning of reflection. He walked into the rain, not victorious, not destroyed, just human. Evelyn watched him disappear into darkness, then turned to those standing behind her. The teenager spoke first. You think he'll come back? Evelyn shook her head gently. No. His fight is no longer with me. It's with himself. Daniel exhaled, relief like warm air in cold night. You changed a city, Evelyn. Evelyn smiled, small but eternal. I didn't change a city. I reminded it how to stand. The judge stepped forward, placing a respectful hand on her shoulder. History will remember you. Evelyn looked out at the street, water glistening under streetlights like memory. I don't need history to remember me, she said. I need Leela to never question her seat. Leela ran into her arms, small arms around old shoulders, and in that embrace was 3 generations of fight and future. The group walked her inside, lights spilling golden through the doorway as rain began to fall softly again. But this time, it washed nothing away. It watered something new. A movement, a lesson, a legacy. Because Evelyn Carter didn't start a revolution by shouting. She started it by sitting and not moving. And the world finally moved with her. And some victories are not loud. Some don't come with fanfare or fireworks. Some victories look like an old woman refusing to move, and a city learning how to stand. Remember, courage isn't always a fist raised high. Sometimes it's a seat not surrendered. Stand for what's right. Sit when they tell you to move. Because change doesn't begin with a crowd, it begins with one person who says no, period, and never stands down, period.